I look at the world through the eyes of hell. This is Mike Tyson's words from his autobiography. He grew up in Brooklyn, unfortunately with a background of neglect, no clean clothes, heating, and he actually started making money age 11 fighting anybody who would really fight him. He left school age 7, physically beaten by his mother, bullied. Then he started to hang around people who taught him how to rob houses. When he was first fighting, he was imagining the opponents were the people who'd actually bullied him when he's younger. This was retribution time. Brownsville, this particularly deprived area in Brooklyn, New York, is where people said to him, "You're the only hope we have. We ain't gonna go nowhere, Mike. We're gonna die right here in Brownsville. We've got to tell people before we die that we hung out with you. That's Tyson. He won the Junior Olympics twice." I was also advised that the ones who lost and quit, their demons will actually follow them to their graves because they had the chance to face them and they didn't. So you have to face your demons, Mike, or they will follow you to eternity. Remember to always be careful how you fight your fights, because the way that you fight your fights is the way that you'll live your life. That's the kind of mentoring he got from Gus, one of his first boxing coaches. On Brownsville, he'd actually frequently go back to it even when he was a millionaire, multi-millionaire, and people said to him they don't know why he goes back. And he says, well, why would I make a big deal about going back to Brownsville and giving money away? Because it wasn't like that. People who came from where I had come from had a responsibility to take care of their friends, even if it was 20 years later. Now, after achieving success, he started to enjoy his time more and unfortunately train less. And he started to fuck and party as opposed to just train. So he described orgies where he was actually sharing women with his bodyguards. He then went to prison for rape. And he states at that point he didn't really pay too much attention to the trial as it happened, as he was an arrogant young man who couldn't be bothered with these kind of proceedings, and he didn't understand them, and that's really what he paid the suits for. His first lawyer, he reports, wasn't very good. When he was in prison, after a while, he could kind of reflect a bit, and he could see the humanity in everyone, even in the racist guards. He started to become familiar with people, other inmates, for example, and when their family members died or they had problems with their wife, he could start to have some empathy and understanding of what they're going through. He states when he actually worked out how the justice system worked, he began to manipulate things to his advantage. And interestingly, whilst in prison, he had sex with a female prison drugs teacher. He initially paid about $10,000 to have her roof fixed. Then he had multiple one-on-one teaching sessions, which ended up him getting her pregnant. He then paid his friend to take her to an abortion clinic, who reported that he was really unhappy with this because the lady was overweight and he didn't want anybody to think that that was his partner. However, throughout Mike Tyson's life, he's had multiple people trying to take money out of him. He was diagnosed with mental health illnesses, depression, bipolar affective disorder, and he started to smoke a lot of cannabis, which led to him stopping training and partying hard. Unfortunately, he also developed a significant cocaine habit. Over his career, multiple people accused him of rape. However, unlike the first time, he actually got a good lawyer who could investigate these in his favour more so some of these cases were dropped. He was fearful that he'd actually contracted AIDS, not just because he'd had sex with a lot of people. One in particular, who his friend had also had sex with, had both died of AIDS. And then when he'd lost weight, which was probably from not eating and taking lots of cocaine, he was convinced he had AIDS, and he recounted in his autobiography about getting an HIV test and thinking that the doctor had been bribed to say it was negative. When preparing to fight Lennox Lewis, he'd actually been not training, taking lots of cocaine and cannabis, and he felt that the cocaine made him even more aggressive, and it was difficult to handle some of the press conferences. He mentioned a bit about his training. He was doing 2,500 sit-ups a day with weights, and this actually caused him to break his back. Then he was walking 100 miles a day, basically while smoking cannabis and drinking alcohol, often not taking water or money around with him, so just having to go into shops and hope they'd give him water. He then even phoned the police when he had drugs on him, on his own security guard, saying, "These people are following me around." They were following him around, it was his job. He mentions quite a lot of encounters with police, and many of which he had significant quantities of drugs on him. Fortunately, his celebrity status meant that often the police would just help him. "Oh, you were swerving about in your car, were you, Mike? Yeah, I'm lost. I didn't know where the party is. I'm going here." And then they'd say, "Okay, well, follow me." But one of the important things is he continues to perceive himself as a street person. There's lots of tales about his drunkard fights, which sound rather pointless, but he started throwing vicious lefts and rights at some person who managed to duck and run away but lost their mink coat in the process. So he picked up this person's mink coat, pulled down his trousers and pants, and wiped his ass on the mink. By this time it was after the club had closed, so sun was coming up. Lots of people were going to work, for example. He did get sued for this for a lot of money. Specifically about drugs, he mentions, "I tried heroin once when I was younger. I smoked it and it made me feel really bad. I had to throw up. Just looking at junkies was enough to put me off heroin. I could look at heroin and a heroin addict and actually see their soul had gone. You figure that that's what you have to look forward to. I started buying and sniffing coke when I was 11, but I'd been drinking alcohol since I was a baby. I'd come from a long line of drunks. My mother used to give me Thunderbird or Gordon's gin to make me go to sleep. When I was 10, my friends and I would buy bottles of Mad Dog 2020, Bacardi 151, or Brass Monkey, the real cheap shit that kills your guts. We also started smoking weed and hash and even opium and angel dust. I even did some blotter acid once when I was young. We did some Jocelyn when we were high on acid, and that didn't work out well. We'd been snatched shit and laughing and running. The cops, they're coming. We'd laugh and hide under a car, except for 1-2 year stretch, and the time that he was in prison, he was always drunk. On sex, he reflects, "What did all my sexual conquests amount to? When you're fucking up all those girls, it makes you feel like shit, but you can't stop doing it. You hate yourself. You feel sorry for the girl. I never loved them. Everything I said was a fucking lie, even if I didn't realise that at the time. Being with all those women was the equivalent of masturbating. I had a lot of fun, but I didn't produce anything. I thought I'd get emotional satisfaction out of sleeping with them, but I was just a smuck. I was in love with love, not the actual individual. I felt like I was in a hole, and the more people I fucked, the more despair I felt. It's a bad feeling that when they're gone and you're alone in your bedroom and you can still feel some of their moisture on the bed. That was hell. I felt so soulless. So then you just get up more girls in so you don't have to think about that feeling." Mike travelled widely to Jamaica, Cuba, and mingled with A-listers. In Chechnya, he learnt that the trick was actually to let people in charge of him and not to be confrontational. Unfortunately, one of his children died as a baby, and unsurprisingly, he found this extremely difficult. Someone has to pay and take the pain, even if it's me. It's been 4 years now, and I still don't know how I'm going to survive this. I often wonder that if I was there, maybe things would have been different. He was born a Catholic, but became a Muslim whilst in prison. He mentions that this concept of God is too complicated, and he just doesn't understand religion and God. He wants to, but he doesn't. He made the Hajj, and others were saying, oh, we've got Mike Tyson making the Hajj here, the mighty Mike. And he realised they didn't care about him as a person. They just cared about their publicity agenda. But at Hajj, he realised that he could never be a good Muslim to the strictest pious sense. He brought a lot of baggage with him into religion, but what he could do is listen to the teachings of the Prophet and try to live his way on the same path. Judge people on their goodness of their hearts. He states his chronic negative self-image doesn't need much ammunition to act out and sabotage whatever happiness he obtained. He filed for bankruptcy and even mentions that somebody stole his credit card, then wrote online that he didn't even have enough money to go for a meal. At that point he reflected, I don't have no watch, no money, no phone. I feel so peaceful. No one is telling me to go here, go there, do this. I used to have cars that I never drove. I wouldn't even know where the keys for them were. I had houses I didn't live in. I had everybody robbing me. Now I have nothing. Nobody calls me. Nobody bothers me. Nobody is after me. It's so peaceful. This is rich, man. After being broke, he's now started his new career as an actor, starring the Hangover films. They're worth a watch if you've not seen them. And really, this has given him a new chance to earn money. Interestingly, he also keeps roller pigeons as pets after being exposed to pigeons at a young age by the people who taught him to break into houses. Let me leave you with this. When you've never had anything, you tend to want to accumulate a lot when you can. But as you get older, you realise that life is not about accumulation. Life is about loss. The older you get, the more loss you experience. We lose our hair, we lose our teeth, we lose our loved ones. Hopefully, we can learn to be strong from those losses, and we can pass on our wisdom to the people we care about. How profound. I'll see you next time.